Imagine getting hacked by a virus called Gayfemboy. Yes, it's actually a real malware. Be careful if you decide to go searching more info about it. Do not put a space in there. And as for what this malware actually is, it's a botnet malware that targets networking hardware, especially like routers from Cisco, TP-Link, and others. Now, the name of this malware strain actually comes from the literal text string that it sends to its command and control server as a registration packet, basically saying, hey, here I am, I'm a new device on the botnet, and it literally sends the text Gayfemboy as that. The creators of the malware definitely leaned into the theme though. If I'm being honest, it's actually kind of hilarious. For example, when it initially executes the malware, it prints the string Twinks, and the string to activate its backdoor functionality is meow meow. And even for the domain names of the command and control servers, just read them for yourself. It's basically one big shitpost in malware form, except it actually does do damage. Fortunately, it does not target desktop computers. You're not going to be having to explain to your boss or parents why your computer's been infected with the Gayfemboy virus. Rather, the malware is for adding networking hardware to a botnet for participating in DDoS campaigns, distributed denial service attacks, where basically they take over as many computers and devices as they can and kind of hide in there. And then when they get a command from the central command and control server, then they all send one massive wave of data continuously towards whatever target. And because it's so much data that the hosting provider gets overwhelmed and then just takes down the site. And because it's from a bunch of different legitimate IP addresses, it's really hard to block and defend against different DDoS attacks like that. There are companies like Cloudflare that do that, but it's a thing that hackers will charge money for. Now, this particular strain of malware is actually based on a different one called Mirai. I don't know if I'm pronouncing that right. And it was actually originally seen earlier last year, but has evolved over time and become a lot more advanced since then. It's able to get a foothold into all these different devices by exploiting vulnerabilities that are specific to those different manufacturers. So it's not just one vulnerability. All of the vulnerabilities it uses apparently have been patched in the past. So basically this is a result of businesses not keeping their stuff up to date, but still. And it also doesn't seem to be targeting any particular business sector individually. I'm guessing it's just whatever routers they find that happen to be vulnerable. Now, as for what it does if a device is actually vulnerable, initially it's able to run a command through that vulnerability to have it download a downloader script. And then that downloader script then downloads the main payload of the malware, which then runs and establishes itself. When it's initially executed, it does a lot of different tricks. For example, it will actually check for other malware infections on the system, and if it finds any, it will remove those because it doesn't want any competition. And then it just sits quietly and waits for commands from the command and control server. Although apparently it seems like it might also have crypto mining functionality in there, I guess to make additional money for the creators. And while it's running, it has a bunch of different functions it uses, like the attack one for actually doing the denial service attacks, and also another one called monitor, which for example will detect whether or not the malware process has stopped and then restart it. It also tries to detect if it's running within a sandbox, like a malware analysis sandbox. And the way it does it is actually pretty clever. It uses a delay that it sets at 50 nanoseconds, very small, and then detects whether or not that machine that it's running on is able to actually handle such a fine-grained delay like that. And if it's too far off, it might assume that, well, this is just a virtual environment, and then actually do a way longer delay of 27 hours. And that's because if it is a sandbox doing an analysis, it's probably not going to run it for that long. Apparently, it also does some kind of check of the current date compared to what it expects. And if it's older than a certain time, then it temporarily disables itself. I guess in the case of like a rollback, like if the business finds out it's been infected, does a rollback, but the malware is still on there, the malware will actually kind of deactivate temporarily so that the business might think it's good and then reactivate later. So if you work in an enterprise environment, definitely make sure all your equipment is up to date. You definitely don't want to have to explain this one to your boss. But for regular home users, you probably don't have to worry about this one. But in any case, let me know what you think down in the comments. If you want to keep watching, here's a video where I talked about a recent Windows update that could be killing SSDs. You might actually want to consider rolling back that update. I talk about that over there. So I'll put that link right there you can click on. Thanks for watching, and I'll see you in the next one.